The town had fared well as a result of new travelers stopping in for the holidays. Business had slowed after Christmas and the New Year, but with the promise of warm weather and the snow soon to melt, outsiders had placed reservations weeks in advance to secure a spot. It was now safe to assume that with a well-designed website and a good amount of traffic both there and into Solomon's Cross, the town was firmly on the map. The occupants, though wary at first of Grand's Rest reopening, were much appeased when their places of business started doing much better. The workers at the local diner, Harv's Hamburgers and Hotcakes, quickly set aside their "we don't like newcomers in here" attitude and put on smiles for visitors. The residents of the town, who regularly frequented the diner, were glad the coffee was fresh more often and the food was more carefully cooked, with fewer overcooked burger patties and undercooked pancakes. The soda was no longer diluted with water, and they started offering 2 different cuts of fries and added a 4th milkshake flavor to their menu. Jemma thought about all these things as she made her way up the mountain to Grand's Rest. Several months previously, when she and her single father moved here, she had viewed the town as other wary outsiders would. It had once been too quiet and dark for her liking. After she met Mama B and her best friends, the McCarthy siblings, things changed. Now, she liked the town and wished to help make the place more appealing to visitors. That could start with her job as head groundskeeper at Grand's Rest. The strangeness could become endearing with the right marketing. For instance, there were many odd yet endearing things about her employer. It was a warm day, despite snow still being on the ground, so Jemma had chosen to ride her bike up the mountain. Since the ground had been too cold to work, her groundskeeping tasks had been limited for the past couple of months. Riding her bike up the mountain would help her build up muscles. When she arrived, Jemma leaned her bike against an old shed she had recently given a new coat of paint and went toward the front doors of the cabin-like structure that was Grand's Rest. She smiled and nodded at a middle-aged couple occupying a newly repaired swing on the porch. They drank post-breakfast coffee and looked over the grounds. Jemma went inside and found the hall with the front desk vacant. The adjoining den and dining room were occupied by the housekeepers and the 3 maids Mama B had hired to keep the place orderly and clean. Jemma greeted them with smiles, too, and went into the kitchen, where she found the cook cleaning up from breakfast. She swiped a couple of leftover waffles, not minding that they were cold, and a cup of coffee. "Seen Mama B yet today?" she asked the middle-aged woman who was employed as the breakfast cook. The cook shook her head and continued wiping down the counters as the dishes dried. Jemma glanced out the window, which overlooked the back portion of the grounds. A slope led down the mountain. The garden just outside the back door looked dismal since nothing had yet grown back. When the garden began blooming again, Jemma would have her work cut out for her. She was looking forward to it. As she'd hoped, Mama B was not sitting on the stone bench near the back window. Jemma stopped short, hearing noise from overhead. The clacking of a keyboard and muttered curses. Jemma shook her head, grinning, and muttered, "It's Mama B on that damned computer again." Finishing off her coffee and eating the last bit of waffle on her way up the stairs, Jemma sought the bed and breakfast's owner in her quaint, wood-paneled office-library combo. In the narrow hallway, bathed in the golden morning sunlight, Jemma almost ran into another one of the maids, who carried an armful of linens she was taking down to wash. "Morning, Jemma," the young woman greeted her. Since she was taking college courses remotely, the maid worked at Grand's Rest in the mornings and evenings. "Morning, Liza," Jemma returned. She would have normally engaged the employee in conversation, but she could hear Mama B's deep sigh from the room at the far end of the hall. Jemma passed the maid and entered the room. There, she found that Mama B was indeed at her large oak desk, bent over a massive computer. If Mama B hadn't been so old, Jemma might have thought the computer had been pulled out of ancient times and hooked up to electrical wiring that hadn't been tampered with in over 20 years. One of these 2 things was true. The room was darker than the rest,